welcome. Thank you for coming to our very first breakout session of camp. As you have seen on the schedule, there is a blood draw available, and we would like anybody that has LFS, if you are interested in participating in the blood draw, that will be happening in the Home Builders Lodge after this presentation at 10:30. And right now we're going to learn what that blood draw is about. We are lucky enough to have via Zoom Dr. Luke Maese and Dr. Brian Crompton. Dr. Luke Maese is from the University of Utah Huntstman Cancer Institute, and Dr. Brian Crompton is from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. If anybody in the audience has any questions throughout the course of the presentation, raise your hand. I will come and get it from you, and I'll jump up here and I will ask the doctors your question on your behalf. So Dr. Maese, Dr. Crompton, please take it away. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Amy. Thanks, everyone. Really wish we could be there in person. I'm sure you're enjoying the beautiful mountain air. I enjoy that here on the other side of the Rockies, and there's nothing like it. Brian enjoys that that breeze off the Atlantic Ocean in Boston. So, really look forward to spending some time with you. Really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your vacation to sit down and listen to us and talk about our effort here. And really, I'll emphasize this, and we'll emphasize this throughout the next 30 minutes, but we couldn't do any of this without you all. And really the only reason we function is because of your generosity and your commitment to this disease that you all are either directly impacted by or indirectly impacted by. And so we'll talk about how we're trying to team up with you guys to try and find better ways for you all and to advance kind of the care that we provide for you and your families. So we'll go over a little bit of background first, and some of this you guys are aware of, but really wanted to start at a baseline and then talk to you a little bit about EDISYN, which is the early detection in syndromic cancers, this consortium that Brian and I and others have started. And it's really still in its infancy, and again, because of tremendous support from Living LFS, and you all were able to continue this movement forward, and excited to talk to you a little bit about it today. And as Annie said, if you want to interrupt, feel free. It's hard to have a direct conversation when we're in 3 different time zones, but we're going to do our best here. Okay, so no dumb questions, and certainly look forward to the next little bit. So see if I can, there we go. So you all are aware of the clinical care that's provided for Li-Fraumeni syndrome. You follow in a clinic, or you follow with your family members in a clinic, or you have experience with this. But just so you all know, our kind of guidelines for patients with such high risk of cancer are displayed here in 2 different tables, kind of depending on your age. I think the history and physical and the psychosocial assessments are something that are important for any person, whether or not they have Li-Fraumeni syndrome, but extra important for patients with this risk of cancer. And then children, we are looking at certain cancers there in the pediatric population in the bottom left corner, adrenal cortical carcinoma, brain tumors, and sarcomas. These are the classic type of malignancies, and how this disease entity was defined really over 30, 40 years ago now. And how we screen for them is indicated there, and we do ultrasounds up to a certain age in the pediatric population. And then, of course, you all are familiar with the brain and the whole body MRIs that are done throughout lifetime. And then as people get older, right, the adults, there's a little bit higher risk for other things like breast cancer. This is the most common cancer we see in Li-Fraumeni syndrome. And we do breast screening, twice a year. And there's always, or there should be, a discussion on whether or not the patient and the family want to pursue risk reducing surgery at a certain time, which is always an option as well. GI cancers, I think, Wendy Coleman and I, when we see our patients at Huntstman, this is one of we get up on our pedestal and our high horse and talk about these things. I think no one enjoys a colonoscopy. I haven't had the pleasure of having one yet, but I'm getting up there in age, and so it won't be too long. but I'll tell you, this is the one way we can prevent cancer, right? So you find a polyp, you can get it removed. And, the guidelines say every 2 to 5 years. Wendy and I are pretty aggressive, and we talk about every 2 to 3 year colonoscopies, and then alternating with an upper endoscopy as well. And then skin cancers, if you live anywhere now, I guess, in this wild, wonderful world, you have a risk for increased sun exposure. And looking for melanomas is an important part of the screening, and getting a skin exam. Really, we all should be doing this, but particularly for Li-Fraumeni syndrome. And then, of course, the whole body MRIs, which we spoke about earlier. So this is what we're doing now, right? And so I think one of the major questions that brought Brian and I and this consortium together was how can we improve upon these guidelines. And this is a major question of EDISYN itself. So can we optimize our screening of patients with this high predisposition for cancer? And this was now a few years ago. It seems like much longer. Say what you will, this pandemic has changed the way I perceive time. I can't, it's hard for me to remember when Brian and I and Josh sat down at a meeting and kind of went over this idea and to try and figure this out. But it wasn't that long ago, I guess. But of course, many of you Josh Schiffman, a mentor of mine, and he's very involved in EDISYN itself. I joke, he gives a great presentation. If you ever heard him talk, if you ever heard him speak, if you haven't, you should really sign up for any talk that he gives if it's available. But this is his picture that he likes to put up, but this is the picture that I like to put up. This is what this is how he thinks. This is my kind of mental image of Josh when I think of him. And this kind of mad scientist mentality is what him, Brian, and I have kind of how we kind of formed EDISYN, and now we have so many great people involved, and so we're thinking about increasing the sensitivity and specificity of our testing. So yeah, MRIs are great, right? They can pick up lots of things. You all have, I'm sure, undoubtedly been through an experience of when you pick up something, you're not sure what it is, and they're not as specific as we would like, and can we improve upon that? We know about the cost of MRIs. This is a big challenge. A lot of my time is spent on the phone talking to insurance companies, and it's not fair. But it's part of the world we live in, and can we find a way to curtail this? And then we want to broaden accessibility. We'll talk about the EDISYN institutions in a minute, but there's not great accessibility to following at an institution that's focused within this kind of area. And if we can broaden our accessibility of some of these screening things, maybe make it easier, of course, on you all and your families. So we then came up, we have imaging, right? And so what about a blood test? And that's how we really think, and how the world is moving towards, right? We're broadening accessibility. You can't get MRIs on everyone. MRIs are big, expensive machines, but can you develop a blood test where you can just draw a blood sample from anyone at any time, anywhere in the world? We're all connected now. The postal service isn't what it used to be, but it can still get it there in time. And we have tubes that we can use that can curtail some of the delays that the postal service will bring about nowadays. But so this blood draw, what we think about is Greg calls it in the agenda the floating tumor DNA study. There's lots of words for this. I think circulating tumor DNA, cell-free DNA, liquid biopsies. These are all similar terms for really the same thing. And this slide here kind of gives some scientific kind of descriptions of what we're looking for. So you can imagine anything going on in your body, right? Nowadays, just to simplify it, there's probably something you can detect, right? We think, this world we live in is a molecular world now, and we're getting even deeper and deeper with our understanding of what's going on at a cellular level. And if you have something else that's going on in your body, whether it be a cancer or something else, if we can develop or utilize the technology that's out there, then we can maybe improve some of our detection techniques. And I think you know, when we think about a blood test that can do this, you know, it can get very technical, and this is why Dr. Crompton is why Dr. Crompton's on the fast track to success within our world, because he's devising some of these techniques. But you know, this is for screening. You know, can we utilize a blood test that could detect tumors in patients earlier at an earlier time? Can we use MRIs and blood tests together to do this? You know, I think, you know, you also think about response. You know, there's lots of literature. This is even in the lay press now. Blood tests to detect cancer in patients who've had cancer before. And I think what we're trying to do is think about this in the context of Li-Fraumeni syndrome, and this is really the crux of what EDISYN was founded on, and a big part of what we're doing. And you can imagine then, if we're needing to develop a new test, right? The amount of work that goes into that is tremendous. But you know, we're not able to do these things without the support of you all and your families, because you know, the samples, the blood samples are not readily available. And you know, that's how, you know, we have utilized our relationships with Living LFS and other organizations to really kind of bring this to you all, to show you what we're doing, and to involve you in the efforts that we're moving forward. And so these are the 5 institutions that are the participating members in this EDISYN Consortium. And I just detailed this map here, and given you here the locations and the different institutions involved. So we, you know, Utah's out west, so Minnesota kind of in the Midwest North, and then you know, 3 institutions in the East, in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, in Maryland. And I'll emphasize this as well. You know, this isn't just a childhood effort. This isn't just an adult effort. You know, again, Li-Fraumeni syndrome, right, spans the age groups from birth to death, and we have experts within both realms. And you know, we're a family organization like you guys are, and we emphasize that. And so, you know, with that, you know, we have our patients that we want to involve, and we've done this through involving Greg in our consortium, who's an active member and participates in much of what we're doing. And then Jen Perry from the LFSA also participates in our meetings and in our movements here, and know that you all are well represented in what we're doing here. Blood sample or not, you're always in our minds, and have representation from your leadership. And so, you know, now I'll take you through kind of what, you know, we think as a general roadmap of what EDISYN is trying to do, and we'll go through each of these points individually. And you know, we are condensing this presentation in a 30-minute time period. And I'll tell you, and I'll try and emphasize this, this is just because a mad scientist from Utah and a brilliant scientist from Boston have an idea doesn't mean it can just happen like that. I wish it could, but it does take time, and it takes a lot of people. And we'll try and take you through that, you know, real briefly, and then talk about the future, and then talk about a little bit about you know, how you guys can participate at camp this year. So the formalization of our consortium, I think that this was one of the biggest kind of things that we were able to accomplish. And I've cut and pasted this agreement. And what this is a memorandum of understanding. And Brian is smiling because I think it's hard. And some of you all, I'm sure, participate in some of this kind of legalese stuff more than Brian and I do. We're clinicians, we're scientists. We don't really understand a lot of what goes into these agreements. And frankly, Brian understand a little bit more. I had no idea. And what it took to get these 6 institutions to agree to be part of this consortium, to be part of this effort, was really monumental. And I, you know, included the signatures of these 6 different people. They're all lawyers, I believe. Well, there's a scientist, Lisa's a scientist, but you know, these are 6 large academic institutions with priorities and laws and governing bodies. And and for all of us to come together was quite a feat. And this happened in November of 2020. So even after the last Living LFS meeting, this I did talk about this in there, and we hadn't had this agreement yet, and this did come together after that. And so this was really the foundation of the consortium, and it's a huge deal because it allows us to do many different things now unencumbered by other agreements and certain things. And so we're able to operate now and make more progress faster, and to share samples, to share data. These things are essential if you're trying to make movements in a rare disease like LFS, because you need each other. We all need each other to further our understanding of the disease and the science and such. So this was a big kind of hurdle. And then our next kind of thing, we were simultaneously trying to do these things, but the development of a database. And I'll emphasize this in a little bit as well. The blood samples are important, but without the data, the blood samples aren't as meaningful, because we can't really understand what happened in the patient, what happened in the family. Having that clinical background is so important. And so the samples are a big hurdle, but the data is just as big of a hurdle. And so Susan McFarland, who's one of our members of EDISYN, and she's a pediatric oncologist at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, her and her team took on this task of developing this database. And again, I've just kind of snipped and cut some text here. I couldn't scroll through this the data dictionary. It's like no one uses dictionaries anymore, I guess, but these dictionaries are so long. This is like a 10-page document of all these different types of variables that we need to input for each sample that we get. And so for one sample to put in all the data, it could take hours. And having a centralized database allows us to keep track of those things, keep track of samples that we collected years ago, and going forward. And so we're able to organize this in a way where it's useful for the future. And again, can't emphasize the importance of the data enough. And so this is now developed, and we're inputting data from the samples that we've collected so far. And then we move to kind of the meat of what we're doing is the development and validation of a circulating tumor DNA or a floating tumor DNA test. And this is again just as time intensive and as difficult as you would think. Developing a new blood test is a monumental effort, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of collaboration and brilliant people behind it. And Brian is leading this effort. And so we have collected retrospective samples. So you can imagine, if we're going to develop a test that's going to detect cancer, well, we need to first have samples that we had collected in the past where the patient had cancer. And so we can test those samples so we can see what is the techniques we need to use, what is the depth of understanding that we need, what is the what's the science behind it. And so we need to have those retrospective samples, and we have those. And Brian is currently working on that, and developing and validating this test. And that's kind of the stages we're at in there. And so since our kind of coming together of understanding that EDISYN was going to happen, though, we've also, each of the institutions have been collecting samples prospectively since 2019. So our efforts are trying to bank these samples now locally, and then if there's if that sample becomes useful in the future, then that's another thing that we can use for developing and validating our tests. So we're able to we're thinking ahead while we're trying to do something in the now, and that's kind of the idea, the stages that we're at. I think in terms of thinking ahead, once we have something that we think we can go on in terms of a test that we think has a good chance of being successful, I think our ultimate goal, right, is to think about a future clinical trial where we can do some of this testing in real time and look at it, the results of it in comparison to MRIs and such. And so, I do think, people always want to know what's the future and how far off is something like this. And it's always hard to tell. I think, we hope that, the more science that we understand, the more samples that we have, that we'll be able to do this, in the next, 5 or so years. I think it's down the road, but something that is an ultimate goal of what we're doing here in EDISYN. And of course, you would all have opportunities to participate in this. And then, as a part of this, separately, but still a part of EDISYN, right? We're not, just like you guys at Living LFS are not, wedded to this kind of group, right? You have your own support groups, other support groups, and things like that. Within this kind of field of early detection, there's other people who aren't necessarily part of EDISYN itself, but other people who are working on different things within this realm, looking at different technology. We're not operating in isolation. And I think being around you all and being at the camp a few years ago, and knowing you all, my patients that I see very closely, and the ones that communicate with me outside of that, we're also supportive of this effort, right? And that's a thing that EDISYN wants to be a part of. I mean, we're not in it to win it. We're in it to beat this disease and this entity that you guys are all battling. And so we want to help whoever else is working on this. And so we want to utilize this memorandum of understanding, this amazing consortium, our infrastructure that we have to support these outside collaborators. And so, what we're doing now in terms of this is drafting more agreements. So we're going to be able to support some of these outside collaborators more easily. We're drafting guidelines and how this is going to happen, and how it gets approved. But in the meantime, while we're doing this, we're actively supporting other efforts. So Karen Maxwell is a physician scientist at the University of Pennsylvania, brilliant researcher and clinician, and we've supported her efforts in trying to get additional grant funding by utilizing the EDISYN Consortium, and she's a big part of the EDISYN Consortium as well, and so we're actively supporting her and her efforts within the breast cancer realm in patients with Li-Fraumeni syndrome. Dr. Kelly Bolton is a physician scientist at WashU in St. Louis, and we recently had her talk to the EDISYN group at one of our every other month meetings, and she presented some amazing work that she's doing within this realm, and we're going to try and support her as she kind of thinks about how to improve our detection techniques in patients with Li-Fraumeni syndrome. And then there's a larger consortium that some of you may have heard of called the Children's Cancer Predisposition Consortium. This is a consortium of 7 hospitals that see children, and Brian and I are part of this as well, and so is Suzanne, and there's some other institutions as well, but we have partnered with them formally, and they have agreed to supporting EDISYN as well. So they're going to be able to outreach into other areas where our institutions are not, and we're going to be able to gather more samples that way in the pediatric population. And so this is a team effort, and this team goes beyond the EDISYN team, I think is one of the main themes with this slide. So now when you talk about EDISYN participation, how can you do this? And I think, Annie mentioned the sample donation, and we'll provide a little bit more info on this, but there's many of you that have already donated. I can't thank you enough. Like I said, and we wouldn't be giving this talk, we wouldn't have this opportunity without you all. Certainly you can follow at one of the institutions, and it makes it really easy to donate samples if you follow at one of our institutions. If you do not, we've kind of settled on a universal process where you can remotely consent through the NIH, the NCI, LFS protocol, the LFS study, and we'll provide some more information for you about that here in a little bit. And our goal is to collect samples at every 6-month intervals. I think, this is the goal. We don't always do this in Utah, depending on what's going on. We're doing yearly visits. If you do semi-annual visits, it's easier. Sometimes getting the blood mailed and back and forth can be hard. We follow many patients who live very far away from Salt Lake. So our goal is to collect that often, but collecting every year is also acceptable, certainly. And we just want to maximize the number of samples at time points that we can get. again, I said I would mention this, that it's not just about the samples. You know, it's the clinical data is essential to this effort. If we have a blood sample and don't know if that person had cancer, we don't know their history of cancer, it is not as helpful. And everyone's clinical history changes, right? That's the thing. It's challenging to stay up to date with those things as time goes on. You know, your family history changes, your history changes, and staying up to date with those things is important. And one of the reasons that why it's, you know, it's easier to stay up to date if you're following an institution, but if you're remotely consented through the NIH NCI protocol, they have regular intervals where they're sending communications for you to update this stuff. Importantly, there's no cost to you all to participate in our consortium, other than the gas money it may take to get to the clinic visits nowadays. But that's for clinical care, so you don't have to worry about that. But the samples, everything else, nothing. There's no cost to you all. Nothing is billed to your insurance or anything like that. So in terms of the camp this weekend, so you can donate at the camp, as Annie said. This is I put this in there. I think if you're followed at an EDISYN institution, you don't necessarily have to do this, but certainly it's another time point. If you do and you want to, that would be great. We would certainly appreciate it, but know that if you're followed at one of our institutions, you're donating on a regular basis. It's something we all talk to. If you're already remotely consented through the protocol, the NIH NCI protocol, then you're eligible to donate, and that should be fine, and shouldn't be any issues. If not, though, and would like to participate, we've talked about this we kind of put this together in the last week or so. It's some amazing work from the NIH NCI, Brian, and everything. So, but you can call this number, and this number will be on my last slide, so don't worry about writing it down now. And you can ask for the Kathy Nichols, who's the NCI LFS study team nurse, and she's standing by till 5 Eastern. So it's 11 Eastern now. So you got some time to call her. She may get busy, so we'll see. But again, depending on the availability, you may be able to consent to have the blood collected during the camp, but you can also enroll anytime in the NCI LFS study and donate remotely. They have an excellent modality to do this, and so don't stress about it if you're not able to do it at the camp now. But certainly if you are, we would greatly appreciate it. But again, no worries if you cannot. This is something that's always going to be available for you all, and the people, maybe you have family members or other people who aren't at the camp, you can share this with them as well, and they can participate as well, and you can spread the word, because this is what we're trying to do. Now I'm gonna try something. We're gonna see if this works. So this is our website, our other kind of effort that we're incredibly proud of. And you know what, I'm gonna probably have to stop sharing my screen to show you this website. We want to show you guys this because it's amazing, and you all at Living LFS supported this effort so generously, and I hope you can see. It says I'm sharing. I don't know if I am. I am. Right. Okay, good. Great. So this is our website, and you can go to this website as well. It's not a complicated one, but it gets the point across about what we are, who we are, how you can be a part of this operation and see this. Our collaborators is listed here, and this website was sponsored by you all at Living LFS, which we are incredibly grateful for, and really words don't do it justice. So if you wanted to participate, you just click on the participate button here, and it can take you through this, and if you want to come to one of our clinics, that's fine. You can definitely do that. If you cannot, you can go to the NIH's website and you click on their participate, and it talks about how you can participate in their study, and your study will be, your sample will be a part of EDISYN through this kind of remote consenting participation. So
Luke, I just wanted to point out that number there, that 1-800 number on the page you're showing right now, is the same one that was on your slide. So
right.
Right. So write it down, or lose, like me, lose their piece of paper when they write things down. You can get through it by our website.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bryce. So again, this website is out there for anyone to peruse, and and our contacts, all of our contacts are on there as well. So you'll be able to do that. And so I think with that, hopefully you can see back to the presentation, B. That's it. And these are all the people that I could go through. Again, this is all the people who are part of EDISYN. There's more people involved than what I've listed here. But we couldn't be more grateful for you all and your support. So with that, I'll take some questions, and for overtime, and you go ahead and we can take them offline too.
Okay, and again, the EDISYN website is edisyn.org, correct?
That's right. Here,
Okay, so you can go to edisyn.org, EDISYN.org, to get the phone number to consent today before you go and donate blood starting at 10:30 in the Home Builders Lodge. The phone number is right here as well, so that you can contact Kathy Nichols, the team nurse. Does another liquid biopsy study conflict with this one?
Absolutely not. Brian can comment on that, but no, we want to be a part of everyone else's entities. I would say it's important though to keep that's the reason data is important, right? We need to know who is donating samples, and we don't want to repeat samples, right? So like say you donated to one institution and the other institution, it's the same person, we don't know it's the same person, it can be a little bit confusing for us, but that's how I would answer that question. Brian, any follow-up there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, though, we have an honest broker system. So if you do like enroll here, and you're also having a sample collected at one of the institutions where you get your follow-up, and that contributes to EDISYN, we will be able to use identifiers in the back end to make sure we're tracking that you're the same person. So don't stress out about that too much. And I would say what I think one of our core principles here is that we actually there's a lot of liquid biopsy technologies out there, and we don't think liquid biopsy is the only answer. So while we have a scientific interest in trying to develop some approaches that we have in mind, we're very aware that it may take multiple approaches or some liquid biopsy combined with other types of ideas, especially MRIs and other things. So we're trying to build something for the future that is very collaborative, like beyond the walls of EDISYN for sure. And we've already had many conversations with different companies that have liquid biopsy products on the market and not on the market. We have ongoing collaborations with other academic groups that are developing liquid biopsy tests. So, EDISYN itself is really the idea is really to create a really relationship between academics and the entire LFS community as much as possible, so that we're poised to bring something as quickly as possible to sort of clinical care to the patients, to you guys, as quickly as we can, knowing that that's still years away, but and to do it properly, and to do it in a way that when we have a test that we're sending, we know how to interpret the results. We're not just saying, well, this company thinks that this means a positive result, so maybe we'll go hunting for a tumor. Like, we want to actually do this in a way where we're powered to say, when a test is positive, it's 80 to 90% chance that there's something real there, and we should definitely go look. Or if there's nothing, then this is the chance that there's definitely nothing. So and we're only going to do that with a large number of patients participating. And so we encourage you to participate here, but there's no restrictions. If if someone is doing a different study and they're doing something different, by all means contribute, because I think we see this as a bit of a long-term effort that's going to take a lot of people out there doing this work to bring something that's really powerful and impactful and improves outcome for patients that we care for in clinic.
Does previous cancer diagnosis or current malignancy exclude you from participating?
Not at all. Not at all.
No, I think it's important, as Luke sort of raised multiple times, making sure that the clinical data that comes with the sample is extremely useful, because we know we can use different samples in different ways. For patients who, say a sample was collected 2 years ago, and we know for that patient no cancer is developed. That's a really powerful negative control to test out our assays. for a patient who is actively undergoing therapy for a known cancer, that's a powerful positive control to say, can we detect the cancer we're expecting to detect? And then, for patients who are undergoing surveillance, and actively giving samples today, like, we don't know, and those are actually valuable for us to eventually develop those positive or predictive value and negative predictive value estimates that we need to be able to tell patients, like, when we see something, is there something really there? And when we don't see anything, is there really nothing there? And so no matter what stage you're at, the sample's helpful, but it is important that you keep us updated on the clinical data, because that's how we use those samples in the right way.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
If you are not actually followed by a EDISYN organization, like, for example, if I go and give blood today and you need blood from me later in 6 months or something like that, how do I then get that blood draw taken and sent to you?
That's a process we're still working on to some extent with the NCI, but that's the vision there, is that they'll have the capacity to request future samples. The easiest way for us to do that is, even if you're not being seen at a specialty clinic for your predisposition surveillance, if you're doing that through like a general PCP, for example, sometimes they manage some of those surveillance. When they're drawing blood, getting an extra tube in coordination with the NCI will be key. I think, having you register through them, if you're not at one of our, 5 or 6 primary sites, part of what the NCI is working on is follow-up contact and reminders to get a blood sample, sending out tubes and kits to make that happen. I think, there's also potentially the opportunity for us to sort of continue to try to do things like blood draws at sort of annual retreats and meetings like this one. So I think there's going to be plenty of ways. I think what we're hoping for, though, now, again, even more important, is getting updates on the clinical data, which the NCI is definitely already part of this study for them, is to get regular updates on the clinical data. So that a sample collected today, powerful a year from now, when we know whether someone with LFS has or has not developed a new cancer, right? So even when we're not getting serial samples, getting even a single sample with serial clinical data is really powerful. So work in progress for the updated blood work, but if you enroll in the NCI study, they are continually asking for the updated data, and that's actually right now the most important piece, is to get updated data periodically.
Perfect. I think that's all the time that we have for questions. So again, if you are interested in participating, if you would like to do this, the blood draw starts at 10:30 in the Home Builders Lodge, and you can call the number on screen, or you can go to edisyn.org, or you can just show up at Home Builders and get the consent taken care of, and then donate your blood if you have LFS.
And that's for today and tomorrow.
Today and tomorrow.
Very good.
Gentlemen, thank you so much very
Thanks,
much
guys.
for
I really
participating.
appreciate it.
Everyone,
Thanks, Amy.
thank you,
Appreciate
everyone.
guys. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you. Hopefully we will see you in person next year.
Definitely.
All right. Bye.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.